Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about how exactly I calculate my macros for carb cycling and just how I go through that process, just figuring out exactly which macros I need, and then also how I plan those meals using various tools. It is pretty straightforward. I would say it's definitely a lot more time consuming than just general meal planning. So I'm going to try to explain this as simply as I can. This is only my second week of carb cycling ever, so it's not like I'm an expert or anything with carb cycling, but I've definitely figured out where I have gone wrong last week, and where I'm definitely going to be going right this coming week. For me personally, planning my meals for carb cycling takes, this is only my second week, but it takes about an hour to an hour and a half, to be honest, because you gotta figure out which foods you want, you gotta figure out the macros on it, you gotta plug it all in and make sure it fits. So, and you gotta plan your days, like high carb, low carb, all that stuff. So it takes a lot longer. With general meal prepping and meal planning, that takes me, just meal planning takes less than 30 minutes. Sometimes it can just take me a few minutes to just do general meal planning because I've been meal prepping for over 2 years. But with carb cycling, you have to come up with, or at least for me, I come up with 3 different scenarios, which has several different meals. So maybe 4 or 5 different meals in there, plus breakfast. So yeah, you got to figure it all out. Plus you got to make the grocery list, calculate the macros. Anyways, I'm going to show you the process that I go through for that step by step, and hopefully it makes it easier for you. There's a couple of things you'll want, so you don't even need apps or anything. You can just use your computer or just search on your phone. You'll want to calculate your resting metabolic rate. So this is just the calories that you burn just naturally. So while you're sleeping, while you're sitting here, while you're existing. So for you to exist, what amount of calories are you burning? I used bodybuilding.com. I just did a quick Google search, what is my resting metabolic rate, and it brought me to bodybuilding.com, or that's the one I chose. You enter in a couple of things, your weight, your height, and then it calculates that for you. So this is, of course, a general number, like a generic number, because this is going to depend on your muscle mass, this is going to depend on your activity level throughout the day, it's going to depend on what you're eating, things like that. So all these numbers are just basic estimates because you can't really be 100% accurate ever with macro counting or body burning stuff. And then you'll want to determine your macros just in general. So this is for carb cycling. You could possibly eyeball things and figure out, oh, I'm eating about this many carbs and this many fats, all that stuff. But for me, it's easier to just count your macros, because if you don't count your macros, you're more likely to overconsume or underconsume depending on your situation. For me, if I were to not count macros, I would definitely overconsume, because I'm like, oh yeah, that's fine. That's not 50 carbs right there. That's 30. So you want to figure out your macros. You can use iifym.com. I'll link it below. I prefer to use Katie Hearn's website to calculate macros. Again, just enter your weight, your activity level, if you want to lose weight, gain weight, things like that. And then it'll give you your results. With IIFYM, they have to email you results, which is kind of just annoying because then you sign up on their email list. But with Katie Hearn's, it just goes right through. These numbers are just approximates, so this isn't set in stone. You don't need to eat that exact amount of protein and that exact amount of carbs. So with carb cycling, we're going to adjust the numbers, and I'll show you how I do that. And I am using my numbers as examples for this, of course, and they are fairly low, but please keep in mind that I'm only 4'10" and about 114 pounds right now. So don't go based off of my numbers, because that will be probably, most people are not my size, this tiny, so that will be too low for you. So go based off of your height, your weight, and your goals. You'll also see numbers that are really low. So for example, on my low carb days, I'll be eating about 1,100 calories, which is very low for me. And that's not maintainable, and that's not something that I want to maintain. But I have realized that with, even cleaning up my diet more than I had it before, because even when I'm bulking, whatever, my diet is fairly clean. I meal prep every single week. I was eating large portion sizes, but my diet was fairly clean. This whole 5 weeks of the cut so far, I haven't seen much results because it's just not enough shock for my body, or at least that's what I'm figuring out. I have to be careful with my numbers and really strict with my numbers, because from this past 5 weeks, I've learned that even by cleaning up my diet and reducing my portion sizes and all that stuff, I'm not seeing results. So this is why I'm trying carb cycling. This is why I'm going a little bit more extreme. I am not willing to go under like 1,000 calories or anything like that. So just do what works for you. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys how I calculate everything. So first, I'm going to write down my macros, and everything is being rounded up or down. So about 1,400 calories. I have about 150 carb, 96 protein, and 40 fat. Now this is not my carb cycling numbers. This is just if I want to lose weight. And now, that 1 pound of body fat is about 3,500 calories. So this is the calculation that I went through to determine my macros for high carb day, moderate carb day, and low carb day. And then we have my resting metabolic rate. It's about 1475, I think, so we're going to just round that down to 1400. Remember, this number depends on your muscle mass, your activity level, what you eat throughout the day, the amount of water you drink, things like that. So this number is probably lower than what my actual resting metabolic rate is, because I'm fairly active at work. I walk a lot, I stand a lot, I have a good bit of muscle. So this is probably a little bit higher, but we're going to keep it low, because then we'll have, more to work with here. And then I'm working out about 6 times a week. And we'll just guess that this number is just an estimate as well. I probably burn about 400 calories per workout. This number is probably higher, but I'd rather go lower, so then hopefully I'll lose more weight. So with these numbers is where I'll figure out my carbs. So for high carb day, we want to have a little bit higher than this. So I went up to 200 carb. Low carb, we want to go under this. So I went to about 100 carb. And then for moderate carb, we're going to stay at that. So moderate carb is like 140 to 150. That's how I determine that. I use my basic macros to just play with some numbers here. And I don't really want to go below 100 carb, because that just makes me feel really groggy and grumpy, and I'm not willing to go to too many extremes in order to get to where I want. So this is a good amount for me. And now we're going to determine how many calories I actually burn throughout the entire week. So I want to lose, for example, 1 pound or more this week. So I need to burn at least 3,500 calories more than I eat. So if I work out 6 times a week, we're going to do 400 by 6 plus I burn 1,400 calories naturally per day. So 1,400 by 7. So when I add all that up, I burn about 12,200 calories per week. Okay? So now I'm going to go through the breakdown of my meals per day. So on high carb day, I will show you how I plan my meals and calculate everything on MyFitnessPal in just a second. So on high carb day, I'm eating 1358 calories, and I have 2 high carb days, so that'll be times 2. Moderate carb day, I'm eating 1227 calories. Low carb day, I'm eating 1094 calories, and I have 4 of those days. So that comes to this consumed per week. Okay, so this is the amount of calories that I'll be eating throughout the whole 7 days. This is the amount that I'll be burning throughout the whole 7 days. So then we just take the amount burned minus consumed, and I'll burn about 3,800 calories per week. So I should lose more than a pound. Now, this number varies because maybe I'll have a day where I burn, 500, 600 calories. Maybe there's a day where my resting metabolic rate is 1,600 or 1,100. So again, this is going to vary, but this is just a good estimate of, I should be able to reach my goal of losing 1 pound this week because of this calculation. So hopefully that makes sense. And let me show you how I figure out these numbers for planning my meals. Okay, the calculations aren't too complex. The part that I don't really know how to describe to you guys is how I plan my meals. So I'm going to try my best. And then, of course, if you have any questions, please let me know. I use MyFitnessPal to add up my macros and my calories because it's very simple to use. There's a lot of, almost every food that I eat is already saved in there. Other people put it in there. It's free to use. It's easy to understand, and I've always gone back to it. I've never been able to find a better food diary. So I like to use the the computer version of it versus the phone. So with the phone, you have to go to separate tabs in order to see a breakdown of your macros and all that stuff. You can see it all on one page on the computer, which is why I like to do it on the computer. With macro counting, you've got to understand, I keep saying it, but everything is going to vary. So it's going to have one medium banana, for example, has this many calories, carbs, etc. But your banana is not going to be exactly that size banana. If you really want to get detailed, you can weigh out every single thing that you eat, but I am not going to do that to myself because that's just unhealthy to me, where you begin to get super obsessed with every single gram of food that you eat. So there are definitely some foods you want to weigh out. So you'll want to weigh out your nut butters, almond butter, things like that, because they're very high in fat, and it's easy to do way more than the serving size because just from personal experience, that's what I always need to weigh out. Weighing out things like granola, rice, dressing, things like that would be important. You may even want to weigh out your protein, just things that are easy to go over or under on. But personally, I don't weigh out my vegetables. That's just, it's not necessary. For me, it's not necessary. So don't make it more difficult than it needs to be is my advice on that. But let me show you how I plan my meals with this. And again, this does take me quite a bit of time. So yeah. Now, when I plan my meals, I always start with what I know. And when I'm calculating my macros, I always start with what I know I'm going to eat for that day. So for example, every single day I'm going to drink my protein. So that's going to be, I can put that in right away, and plus the almond milk that I use. And that's where I start. So for example, high carb day, I like to have rice cakes with almond butter and banana, so I'll add that in. So I know I'm going to eat that. I do a little bit of research on vegetables with the lowest carbs. If there's something I want to eat, like for example, granola. I wanted to have granola this week, so I was doing some research on the healthiest granola with like the lowest amount of sugar, lowest carb, lowest fat. Things like that adds on to the time of, planning your meals. So yeah, I start with what I know I'm going to eat, and then I go from there. Okay, so if you don't have a MyFitnessPal, you just go to myfitnesspal.com. You can log in through Facebook or whatever, just create a new one. And all that I do is enter in on whatever day. So I started with high carb day, and I started on Saturday. I don't put in my food every single day. This is just strictly for getting my macros set. So like I said, first thing I did was put in my almond milk and protein. So that's set right there. And then I'll just, figure out what I want. This was a meal that I had last week, so I put all of that in. And make sure you include your dressings, because those tend to, look how many carbs, that's 11 carbs right there. And I'll talk more about that in a second. But then I'll just think of ideas or go to YouTube, Pinterest, anything like that to find low carb ideas or high carb ideas. High carb day is definitely the easiest. So I'll just enter that all in, get as close as you can to what you're looking for. So banana, 1 medium banana, it's just generic. They put it in for you. Now for this, I didn't know which brand of granola I was going to get, so when I went to the grocery store, I was able to change this. And then what happened was this was a lower carb count than the previous granola I had in here. So it lowered my carb count, so I was able to actually double the serving size because I got a good option. And then down here, you'll see the totals. So here's my calories. And that's the number that I was using to calculate how many calories I eat per week. This is my carb, so this is my high carb day. I don't include, the only food that I don't include in here would be like my coffee and cream. So that would come out to about 200 after that. Fat, 36. When you have a high carb day, you want to have a fairly low fat day. And then my protein is about 80. I'm not too concerned about how much protein I get. I just keep it, this is fairly high, considering I'm vegan, and I'm not too concerned about this number. Now, my sugar count, you can see, is fairly high, but keep in mind I put in a banana and blueberries. That's going to make your sugars go up higher. I just try to keep the number of processed sugars and added sugars down low. So the next day is low carb. First thing I did was add in my protein. I knew I wanted a Zico bread for breakfast, so I added that in. I started with 2 slices, but ended up having to go down to 1. And then I have my 2 tablespoons of almond butter, chia seeds. This is important to add as well, because look at the calories and, the numbers that it adds in. And then I'll just, like I said, get ideas from other people. If it looks like it's a low carb meal, I'll add it in here and adjust what I need to, and it ends up fitting. And then for dinner, same thing. I'll find some idea, put it in here. If it fits, it fits. And then we come down. Carbs 103, fat 54. We want our fat to be higher on a low carb day in order to fill us up. And then protein is about 65. Now for moderate carb day, same thing. I knew I wanted to have this meal because I had the food left over from last week, so I inputted that. Whatever was remaining, I figured out something to fit into my lunch. And then for breakfast, I was able to fit in oats, almond butter, and then blueberries. So moderate carb, 140, moderate fat, 45, and 80 grams of protein. What I've realized from last week that's really important is to add in those little things, because I didn't do this last week. My numbers were definitely off because I wasn't putting in every single thing. So I was probably eating a lot higher carb on every single day than I thought. So for example, I didn't calculate my chia seeds that I was adding in. I didn't calculate all of my vegetables, which can make a big difference. And then I also wasn't adding in the 2 dressings that I used last week. So those do add about 10 carb or 15. It just depends on, what you're eating, but it does make a big difference. So literally track every single thing. The only thing I don't add in is my coffee, like I said, which probably adds about 10 grams of carbs per day, but I'm not worried about that because, like I said, the numbers that I'm burning and my resting metabolic rate will take care of it. So that's not a big deal if you're off by a few. The way that I organize everything is I write it all down on a piece of paper. So I calculate it all on my MyFitnessPal. I write it all here, and then I'll just keep this in the kitchen so that I know what I'm eating for that day and I know what to pack for lunch to bring to work, and that way I don't end up overeating, because I'm not going to remember just off the top of my head exactly what I need to eat for high carb day versus low carb day. Now, I also drink BCAAs every day. I don't calculate that stuff in. There's not even nutrition labels on the thing, so I don't care about that. And what I'm going to try to do this week is drink a gallon of water especially on my low carb days, because I've found, like, for breakfast this morning, I could only have 1 piece of toast, which was less than I was eating last week, and between each bite I was like drinking a few sips of water, which definitely helped me feel more full. And then remember to plan your high carb days and low carb days strategically. So high carb days, you'll want to do big muscle groups. So I have 2 high carb days a week, and that is for leg day. And then I have 1 moderate carb day, which is for back day, and then 4 low carb days. So that would be like biceps, triceps, chest, and abs, things like that. And then I do cardio just about every day. Sometimes I do HIIT, sometimes I do steady state. It just depends on what I'm feeling. So just make sure you plan accordingly, and literally, like, I just plan out my entire week of what I am. Mondays are for leg day, Tuesdays for back day, Wednesday is rest, which of course is a low carb day. I think that covers everything, and that was a lot longer than I expected it to be, but I think that basically breaks it down. If I missed anything, or if you have any questions, anything like that, please comment down below or reach me on Instagram, whatever. Okay, that's all I got. I will see you guys in the next one.